Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. We're doing a deep dive today on some new research about career paths for neurodiverse individuals. And wow, some of the statistics you sent over about autistic adults with college degrees have really been on my mind.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it? We talk about what a college degree is supposed to get you, and then for a lot of autistic graduates, we see what actually happens, and it's pretty different.
Yeah, it's like everyone's handed this map early on, right? Like
Right.
work hard,
Yep.
get good grades, go to college, and then bam, instant success and financial security. But for a lot of autistic adults, it just doesn't really work out that way. And in fact, a shocking 85% of autistic adults are unemployed or underemployed even with a college degree.
It's true, and it makes you wonder about that whole college equals success thing, right? I mean, if it was really about merit and hard work, then why is there this gap between having a degree and actually getting a good job?
Exactly. And on top of that, we have to talk about the wage gap
Yeah.
because the research you sent showed that autistic adults with college degrees earn something like 40% less on average than their peers with other disabilities, even when they have similar qualifications. So not only is it hard to find a job that works, but then to be undervalued like that too, it's just not right.
And that's what I mean about this issue being really complex. It's so easy to fall into that trap of just get a degree and you're set. But there are other things going on here, systemic barriers that have nothing to do with a piece of paper.
So when we talk about these systemic barriers, what are we actually talking about? Like, what are some of the root causes that are creating this gap between education and employment for autistic adults?
That's a great question, and a lot of researchers are trying to figure that out. But one thing we can definitely point to is how much that idea of college equals success persists. Like, it's so deeply ingrained in our society and how we talk about success and what's important in education that it's tough to think beyond it, even when the data is telling us something different.
It's like that cognitive dissonance thing, right? When we're holding on to two beliefs that actually contradict each other and it's uncomfortable, so we see these statistics about autistic grads, but we're still holding on to this idea that a college degree is like a golden ticket.
Totally. And it can be just easier to stick with what feels familiar, even if it's not reality, than to actually face the fact that the system is failing a whole group of people.
And it's not just an idea either, right?
Yeah.
You told me about that story of that millennial with a PhD who's in tons of debt and can't get out of these dead-end jobs and regrets going to college. That story makes these statistics real.
For sure. And unfortunately, that's not the only story like that. There are so many talented people who put in the time and effort and money into their education only to find out that the jobs just aren't there or the jobs don't value what they learned.
So if we know that college equals success is flawed, why is it still a thing? Who benefits from continuing to say it's true when it's hurting so many people?
Well, you have to think about who would want to keep things the same, and one of the big ones is the higher education system itself.
Makes sense when you think about it. Colleges and universities need students to stay open.
Yeah, tuition fees are how they make money, so the more students they enroll, the more money they get, and so it makes sense that they want to keep those numbers up, even if it means not all of those students are ready for the job market, especially students who learn and work differently, like neurodivergent students.
It's like we're told to invest in our future by getting a degree, but it's the colleges that see most of the returns, whether it works out for the student or not.
It's a complicated issue, and it's not just about saying universities are bad. It's about looking at how the entire system is set up.
So is it fair to say that autistic students and maybe other groups are the ones paying the price for these problems?
It's a question worth asking, and to figure that out, we need to look at the whole picture around higher education, like student loan providers, for example.
Student loan providers, right? Feels like they're a big part of this whole invest in your future idea too.
Oh, absolutely. They make a lot of money from students taking out loans, especially students who can't find good-paying jobs after they graduate. It just keeps going.
So it's like a double whammy for autistic graduates. They have a harder time in the job market, and on top of that, they're more likely to be stuck with all this debt they can't pay back.
Exactly. And it's sad because that can make inequality even worse when you think about it. Students from less privileged backgrounds are often told to take out big loans because a degree means a better life, supposedly, but for many, especially neurodiverse students, it just doesn't happen like that. And they're trapped in a system that makes it feel like they can't get ahead.
We've talked a lot about education and loans, but what about the employers? What are they doing in all of this?
That's a big part of this whole thing. Many employers, especially the big companies, care a lot about college degrees, even for entry-level jobs that might not need a degree.
So they're using a college degree to decide who not to hire, even if those people could do the job well.
Right. And there's another way this helps employers. It creates a big group of overqualified people who will take lower pay because they need to pay back their loans.
Real-world experience and actual skills don't matter as much as this piece of paper that costs a ton of money.
And it's ironic, right? Because a lot of the important job skills today, adapting, problem solving, creativity, social intelligence, all that, you don't learn those in a classroom.
Makes you wonder if we're all stuck in this old way of thinking about work and what it means to be successful.
And there's something called survivorship bias that comes in here too. We hear about the people who did great after college, so it seems like it's the only way. But we don't hear about those who struggled, who might have been better off doing something else because those stories don't fit the story we tell ourselves.
It's those rags to riches stories. We love
Ah.
those, right? But we ignore the people who are still struggling.
Yeah.
We don't see the problems with the system itself.
Exactly. And this is where we have to change the conversation. We can't just talk about what's wrong. We have to talk about what else we can do, right?
Right. What are the other options? What about autistic adults? What are some other ways to be successful if the traditional college route isn't working? So let's talk about those. What are some of these alternative paths that we should be thinking about?
Well, one thing that's really exciting is this whole rise of what we call non-college career pathways. Think vocational training, apprenticeships, even supported employment models. These are often built specifically with neurodiversity in mind, recognizing the unique strengths and challenges.
I love that we're talking about this because it really challenges that idea that everyone needs to fit into the same box,
Hmm.
and that's just not true. It seems like these other paths could be a really good fit for autistic individuals, right?
Yeah.
Because they often excel in those environments that value precision and attention to detail and that real structured way of solving problems.
Absolutely. And it's not just about any job, right? It's about finding work that's fulfilling and in demand. One area that's booming right now is advanced manufacturing and renewable energy. Tons of opportunities there for skilled workers, and you don't necessarily need that four-year degree to get stated.
That's so interesting to think about how the value of work is changing. It's not so much about what degree you have, but about having those skills that employers actually need right now and being able to contribute something valuable.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there are many ways to define success in a career, but, and this is a big but, we need employers to get on board too. It's about creating workplaces that are truly inclusive for everyone. It's about recognizing and accommodating neurodiversity rather than seeing it as a problem to be fixed.
So what does that actually look like? What are some things employers can do to create a more inclusive space for their neurodiverse employees?
It's interesting, sometimes it's the little things that make a world of difference. Flexible work arrangements can be huge for someone who's sensitive to sensory overload in a busy office. Or think about things like clear, direct communication, minimizing those unnecessary social interactions that can cause anxiety and misunderstandings. Those are small changes, but they can have a huge impact.
I can see that. These small adjustments can make or break someone's day, and not just for neurodiverse individuals.
Hmm.
Honestly, who wouldn't want a workplace that offered more flexibility and understanding?
Exactly. When we let go of these rigid ideas about how and where work gets done, everyone benefits. It's about embracing what makes us all unique, those different needs and strengths that everyone brings to the table.
This feels so much bigger than just one part of the system, though, right? It's about a fundamental change in how we think about work and success, both from the employer's side and from society as a whole, recognizing that neurodiversity has value, not just economically, but also in terms of making our communities richer and expanding our understanding of what's possible.
100%. And while we're talking about these big picture changes, we can't forget about policy solutions that could create a more level playing field for everyone. We touched on some of this in the research we looked at. Things like universal basic income or student loan forgiveness programs. These could be real game changers.
Absolutely. Those are huge factors, right? Student debt, the wage gap. These things really hold people back. I find UBI so interesting because it makes us rethink our whole relationship with work. It's about making sure everyone has what they need to live regardless of their job, which could free people up to pursue their passions and contribute to society in totally different ways.
Exactly. And student loan forgiveness. Think about the impact that could have. So many people are burdened by that debt. It prevents them from going after their dreams, starting businesses, even affording basic necessities.
There's a real sense of hope here, wouldn't you say? We can rethink our education system, our workplaces, our policies, even how we define success as a society. For someone listening who might still be caught up in that college equals success mindset, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this conversation?
Don't be afraid to question the way things are. Your path is your own, and it doesn't have to look like what everyone else says it should. Don't be afraid to explore those other options, those alternative paths. Define success for yourself. And never be afraid to advocate for a world that recognizes and values what makes you unique, your skills, your talents, everything.
Beautifully said. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. And to everyone listening, keep asking those questions. Keep pushing back against those old stories we tell ourselves. And don't be afraid to explore those alternative paths. Your future self will thank you for it. Until next time, keep on diving.